to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name's Tom Dutta, like Butta. And well, we're back again with an exciting episode. Today I have a special guest. He's in the green room. His name's Dan MacQueen, and there's so many threads in this man's story that are lighting me up. One of them is a thread we share in common. I want to talk also, once I get him on the screen, about how we met, and we have some fun with that. I think today you're going to be inspired. Let me tell you a little bit about Dan MacQueen. 28 years old. Now we're going back to a while back for him. He had a healthy life, very active, and he attended an optometrist appointment. And let's just say that they handed him an envelope that changed his life. Is that enough to tease you? And so Dan's going to take us on a journey through that story. And some of the things I've researched on him, he has a hashtag called Better Than Yesterday. And I said to Dan this morning, I woke up, and it was something that Dan taught me that inspired me to realize that today is a better day than yesterday. To all of you, you know that I've journeyed since 2018 through a brain injury and have some impairment with vision. I took off these covers today, and so that is a better day for me, meaning that I've got somebody today that is going to teach us some of those hacks that he's developed to live a better life. And there's a lot more to Dan, so we're going to bring Dan on the screen now. So everybody, welcome Dan MacQueen. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. Hey, Dan, one of the cool things I want to just, why don't you tell this quick intro? It's the little story about how you and I met from what you can recall. Let's see if we agree.
Introduced from Kelsey.
Okay, who's Kelsey?
So Kelsey's a lovely lady who I went to high school with back in the day. So she recommended that I get in touch with TED Talk Surrey, and conversely, Tom Dutta, like Butta. And so we connected over that, and we met. The first time we met in person was actually at the TEDx Salon event in Surrey, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly it. I don't think I've ever had anybody botch that, saying how we met, because it'd be like my wife saying, "Hey Tom, what's our anniversary?" And after 27 years, I'm going, I'm thinking about it. So you nailed it. Yeah, everyone. What happened was Dan and I were introduced by, as you heard, a friend of his, and I'm involved in public speaking, also a previous TEDx speaker, and Dan and I connected, and there we were as we drove from literally. Well, we actually drove independently, but we met at the TEDx Salon, which we'll get into some other time. I sat together. Kelsey showed up, had a great time. And then we had a fun car ride home where I drove Dan back to North Vancouver. And we'll talk about that because there's a little bit of irony in that one. So Dan, take us back. This is about the hero's journey. It's classic storytelling. I want to take us back to your early years. So there's a lot of my show that talks about youth, growing up, the first 15, 20 years of life. I know age 28 was a big event or a big moment in time, but go back. Tell us about your early years and upbringing, anything at all. Where were you born? Where'd you start? Parents?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Ottawa, Ontario, but moved to Vancouver, BC. Went to high school and university in Vancouver. I moved to Sweden to study a master's degree after that, and was living in Sweden for a year. And decided, let's keep this European adventure alive a little bit longer. So I moved to London. And London's where all this magic happened. So,
wow, the magic. Now you got me intrigued. I'm writing some notes here. Sweden 1 year, London, and every time you say something, a thread clicks in my mind. I was born somewhere not far from London. Let's talk about the masters. Did you were doing this, and I'm assuming that because of some changes in your life, you didn't finish the masters. Is that right?
No, I finished it.
Wow,
Tom, you were speaking to an MA, my man. You were speaking to an MA, brother.
That is inspiring. Everybody, I know we're teasing you here about the actual story, but I'm building it up, so don't spoil the thunder yet or steal the thunder yet. But there's a man who literally goes by his heart, follows his dream, traveling to Sweden, So let's talk about that for a minute. I'm curious what makes people do what they do. So born in Ottawa, etc. But why Sweden and then London? Just what was behind that thinking?
Yeah, Sweden. So I wanted to do a master's, and I realized that a master's in Vancouver was going to cost me maybe 20 grand, and I was going to have to live without income for 20 grand. And I thought, well, I got a European passport, so you can get a free education in Sweden if you have a European passport, because they offer their students free education.
Ah,
So I figured if I can move to Sweden, I can get my education for free and just pay to live in Sweden for a year, and that's going to be about 20 grand or less than that, and I can live in Sweden. This is way better. So I decided to do that.
wow.
Moved to Malmo Högskola,
Yeah.
and studied in Sweden for a year and really enjoyed myself. I mean, studied is a very, I was taking in all sides of the lived experience in Sweden. Let's just say that much, Tom.
That's fantastic. Another thread in my story, probably didn't tell you when I met you. I grew up in Sunshine Hills, North Delta, and I was born in the UK, came here, so I have one of those funny passports too. And the two houses down, I would always be out of my house doing stuff because my house wasn't the most fun place back then, given my circumstances with my parents. But I would babysit Johan and Christina Nylander, and their parents were from Sweden. Dad worked for Volvo. Mom had a professional job. And these kids I grew up with, and I learned the culture and everything. Obviously, I became an ABBA fan by default. Amazing. You know that Vancouver Canucks and the whole history of the Swedes here. The two hockey players. So I think Vancouver loves Sweden. What was the MA focused on? Just curious.
It was leadership for sustainability. So a program about sustainability, but like social entrepreneurship, if that makes sense. So our thesis was called "Doing Well by Doing Good."
Oh, I love it. I'm just writing that down. Doing well by doing good.
Everybody, don't read that thesis, Tom. Don't read that thesis. I'm telling you that right now.
Doing well
by worth your time, brother. I'll tell you that much right now. But it was an interesting course. We did a program with my partner was Thora. She was the professional goalkeeper for the Swedish team in Malmo, and also the Icelandic goaltender.
Wow.
So we did a case study on her football club, and they did a social entrepreneurship project in South Africa, and we interviewed sponsors about why they sponsored that team, and if the social entrepreneurship or the social project they did in South Africa had a part to play in why they sponsored that team, leading to revenue and sponsorship of their team. So it was doing well by doing good. So it was interesting to do, and it was it's not a good paper by any stretch, but it was quite fun to do that and do it with Thor, because she was a really quite an icon in Swedish and Icelandic football. So it's quite cool to do with her.
That's amazing. Everybody, we're here with Dan MacQueen, and one of the things we'll hear more from Dan is how he's become a storyteller. And every time you speak about something I heard for the first time, my mind's going on this journey. There's got to be 1,000 stories out of just that one chapter. I didn't know any of that. Thor. I'm thinking of the one of those Thor Ragnarok movies. Everything's just colliding in my brain. But fascinating. I promise you I won't read that thesis, but somebody thought it was good because they gave you the MA, so congratulations on that. So there you were, and you finished the MA, and then you were in London. So tell me about your parents, just anything you can tell us. How was your childhood growing up? Did they have nurturing parents? Was it a positive experience? What were your biggest challenges?
Yeah, so both parents worked in journalism. My mom was an editor for the province newspaper in Vancouver, and my dad worked for Maclean's magazine, which is a national newspaper or magazine in Canada. They both met at the Kitchener Record, I want to say. Mm-hmm. Journalists, journos, both very loving, caring parents, very supportive. My dad coached my roller hockey team. I wasn't a very sporty guy, but he showed up and he coached the roller hockey team, and I always have got a lot of admiration for him for that, because we only could play if we had a coach, and he was the only guy who stepped up to coach. So he coached us, and I don't think we won the championship, but we got to play, and that was pretty fun. It was fun to spend some time with him and enjoy some hockey. We're both pretty sporty kids. My brother and I played soccer and hockey growing up. I ski raced as well. Folks were phenomenal. Took us traveling. kind of laissez-faire. Well, not laissez-faire. They were both involved, but also very allowed us to experience stuff on our own and test stuff out.
Yeah.
Both Cam and I went to UVic for university, which was pretty phenomenal. UVic's on Victoria, Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
So it was a great upbringing, great life. And then I decided, you know what? I wanted to continue my education. Well, scratch that. I wanted to experience more. Continue my education was a byproduct of that. Sweden was kind of the real draw there. And a master's was the result. So I was pretty lucky that was the case.
Yeah, that was awesome. Just a little backtrack there. UVic. What did you do at UVic?
Politics and business.
Wow, we're learning so much more about Dan today. I'm, again, just writing a couple notes for myself here. So I just want to pull this all together. It's the hero's journey narrative, everyone, behind the show, which is we come from the beginning of life. What you're hearing here unfold is Dan, had nurturing parents. They were both journalists, editors. Again, we're in the west coast of Vancouver, so you're hearing lots of different places in Dan's story. University of Victoria, which is Vancouver Island. You can take a large, what we call the ferry system, BC Ferries over there for about 90 minutes. Beautiful place. Dan went there, politics, business, and then came through that and decided that he wanted more. There was something burning desire in his gut to do more. Goes over to Sweden, and that little chapter we just heard about. So I think we're probably getting close to, let me just go back here. It says at age 28, you were leading a healthy, active life. Tell us what happened next. This is the turning point. You were given an envelope. Get us into that.
Yeah, so I was having these headaches that were getting progressively worse over a few weeks to the point where like my vision went black on the tube. The tube's the subway system in London.
Yeah.
Taking the tube to pick up a microwave in Notting Hill, and my vision went black for like 3 minutes.
Wow.
And I was like, there's something wrong here. So I went to A&E, which is accident and emergency, for the second time. And they thought it was vertigo. They sent me home. But I was like convinced something was wrong here because the vision doesn't just go black. There's something going on here. So I went, but as I was leaving the hospital, they told me you could always get your eyes checked at an optometrist if the headaches continue. So I decided, you know what, the headaches continue. I decided I'm going to get my eyes checked at the optometrist. In the middle of the exam, the optometrist, Mr. Patel, he stopped the exam. Middle of the exam, he stops. He goes, we need to stop this. Hands me a sealed envelope. Tells me to go directly to Moorfields Hospital, which I didn't do. I stopped at home first to grab a Jack Reacher book by Lee Child, because I figured I'd be in for a bit of a wait and want something to read. Grabbed a bite to eat and grabbed a phone charger because I wanted to get this resolved and needed my phone charger to communicate with my family back in Canada. They ran the same test and escalated me to Charing Cross Hospital. It turns out I had a dangerous buildup of pressure in my brain caused from a non-cancerous cyst. Turns out I required emergency brain surgery. Turns out my world was about to change altogether. So this escalated from 0 to 60 in a matter of a couple hours. I frantically rallied the troops in Canada to let them know what was happening over email and text. I've actually got the last text message I sent my mom before we went to emergency brain surgery, Tom, which is quite a coy, cool message by intention. It reads, I'll see you soon, Mom. Think I'll have a new haircut next time I see you. Love, Dan.
Goodness.
That message is masking a lot of insecurity, a lot of fear. I was terrified but didn't want to let it show because I figured this could be the last message to write. I figured this could be curtains for me.
Wow.
And rather than go like a whimpering punk, I decided, you know what, let's send this message across the bow and see how this goes. And if it wasn't so cool and witty, I probably wouldn't read it out to you now online. But I figured if this is it, let's go run into it. So let's see what happens.
Oh my goodness. I'll let you catch your breath there, man. What's your mom's first name?
Roz.
Roz. Beautiful. Is she Canadian too?
Austrian heritage, but Canadian, yeah.
Ah, Austrian. Fantastic. What about your dad? Was he born in Canada?
Yeah, both born in Canada. My dad's Scottish background, but Canadian.
Interesting.
Mom's Canadian, but Austrian background.
Everybody, we're going to, first of all, you let Dan catch his breath. First thing, Dan, is honor you for sharing the painful moments of that story. We I realize, and I think my audience, who are international, by the way, everybody, we're here in the west coast of Vancouver, British Columbia, and you realize something like Dan, who you'll know is a storyteller, and he's been telling this story, that each time you tell the story, the brain goes back and finds it in its neural nets and relives the emotions. And so I honor you. You're a remarkable guy to be able to tell it and stay composed. When you said that thing about that text message, I did chuckle, and I meant it in a good way. Just so you know, Dan, I have a dark sense of humor. They tell me I laugh when I shouldn't, and I laugh at things that aren't funny. And I think you and I found that about each other. But first thing I thought of when you heard that text message is a movie I saw about, no comparison, about 9/11, where you see these moments where people are sending texts. They don't know if they're going to be alive. I never imagined in my lifetime, man, sending a text like that. And dude, you've got something there. That just that one nugget to telling the story and how you told it to us, and then you were quiet and you let me experience that. I, I can't tell you how powerful that is. I want to just bring in here something you and I talked about, everybody, just for the audience, because I said a prayer this morning just before I came on, because a friend of mine's brother had his daughter and a friend of mine's niece in that Nashville school where they had that tragedy. If you're watching this show now, it dates that. There'll be a timestamp, so you'll probably know that. But for 3 hours, they didn't know if the daughter was alive or not. She was hiding in a closet and going through that period of time. And my brain is like a multidimensional storyteller, and when it's going everywhere, man. When you said that, right away I jumped into the mind of your mother, and then back in the mind of you, not knowing what would happen, and this whole time and space thing that happens when we're going through this journey, and there's other people involved. The fun thing is going back to all those people and saying, in that moment, what were you thinking? It's like, wow, you're giving us something here. Everybody, teaching moment about humility, what you just heard from Dan. I'm going to get back in the story, but I just wrote a couple other things down here on my paper, Dan. Notting Hill, interesting. There are some people probably watching this who know what Notting Hill is from some of those movies that we've seen, particularly some of the Christmas movies. Vision going black. Let's talk about that. So when you were in the tube, which is the subway, I guess, in London, it went black. How old were you, and how long was that? And just take us back in that moment. What did you do? Did you sit down? Did you hold something? Did you stand up? Like, how fast was that?
Well, I was getting off the tube and it went black as I was getting off the tube. So I just literally walked to the edge of the wall, the platform, or the side of the platform, and rested against the wall and just waited 3 minutes when the eyesight came back, thankfully, because I was like, I wasn't sure it was going to come back, right? It was, what's going on here? My eyesight, I can't see anything. Like, it went black. Like, I couldn't see anything. Couldn't see my hand in front of my face.
Wow.
And so this was like in between the A&E visits, right? So I went to the A&E visit the first time. They sent me home. This happened in between the first and second visit. After this happened, I decided to go to the A&E the next day. They thought it was vertigo, and again they sent me home. But then they told me to go get my eyes checked at the eye hospital. Yeah. So it was, but yeah, a pretty terrifying moment. Like, what if my vision doesn't come back? And this is not a casual thing, and it kind of validated the point that my headaches were real, and they were like something seriously wrong was going on here, right? Your vision doesn't just go black.
Totally. I had one experience only in my lifetime where my vision went black, and they told me it's connected to hyperglycemia, where I think I was working out in a gym, and I guess I just wasn't properly hydrated. I didn't have enough food in my system, and I got dizzy, and then I remember coming off a treadmill and I felt disoriented. And then, Dan, I literally sat down right beside the treadmill on the floor, and everything just went black. Scared the hell out of me. And this guy comes along, and I hear him talking to me, and he's a coach or somebody in the gym, and he says, "Hey, buddy, are you okay? Are you okay?" And it took, 10 minutes for that slowly to come back. I can't imagine that, what you just told us. I mean, even thinking, everybody, listen, imagine being on a subway, and what if this had happened? Dan got disoriented and fell onto the tracks, or could have killed himself. It's God. God was there looking out for you. All right. So now A&E, you can tell us what that abbreviation means when you take it back. So you've got to get the surgery. You went home. You got the Jack Reeder book. I love you, this guy here. He's like, he's got all this stuff going on, but it's like the house is burning. I got to get my book. I got to make sure I have a meal before I go on. Are you beginning to see a thread here, everybody, that he's got resilience in his soul. He's fearless. Other people would panic and go, I got to get to the hospital now. And they'd be scared and they'd be going into that negative mindset, but not Dan. He found some resilience to do that. All right, Dan, take us back now. Let's move into the two emergency brain surgeries, and I believe that brought you into a state of a coma. Tell us about that and what happened after that.
Yeah, sure. So on June 21st, 2014, my mom was in the air flying to London when I was on the operating table. While she was in the air, I had a brain hemorrhage. She lands and finds I'm in critical condition. I was in a coma for 4 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4. But was in and out of consciousness for months after that. Things were really dicey, touch and go. When all was said and done, I was learning how to walk, talk, and smile again.
Wow.
So I remember coming to from the coma, seeing my mom, dad, and brother around the table. And I'm groggy as all hell, and I can't really make heads or tails of it. And I'm trying to speak, but I can't talk because I had a tracheotomy removed. It took me a few weeks to get my voice back. And so I point at my brother and I go, like indicating like I want to talk to you. Give me a pen and paper, please. I go, give me a pen and paper. I write on the pen and paper, I go, get me out of here. And I show it to Cam. And I point like, yeah, make it happen, bud. It's like, what do you want me to do with that, bud? Like, you got tubes coming out of you. Your one eye is wonky as hell. Like, we're not going anywhere, man. Like, but I'm thinking around, like, I don't know if I got coverage for this. Like, this looks expensive. Let's get out of here while we can. But it was pretty discombobulated. And then I was finally, they told me what had happened. And I was thinking, well, this is not good. This is not good at all. And yeah, so it was quite an abrupt awakening to reality of what happened. And the coma for 4 weeks, and then I lost a ton of weight because I had a feeding tube in my nose, but I would constantly rip out the feeding tube with my hands because I didn't like the feel of it.
Yeah.
So they put mittens around my hands, so I couldn't do that. And then I would take the mittens out of my hands after like hours of wriggling, and then I'd take it out. Every time I rip out the tube, they'd have to put the tube down, but they'd have to x-ray me to make sure it was in my stomach and in my lungs. So I lost probably 20, 30 pounds of weight. I'm not a big guy to begin with, so I was skin and bone at this stage.
Yep.
When I was in a coma, they had to keep my core temperature down below 40 degrees. Otherwise, there'd be brain damage. They used ice blankets above and below me to keep my core temperature down. This led to violent shivering.
Wow.
My family says it was horrible to watch. It was discombobulating. I can't really say I've got too many memories from the coma. I've got one really weird dream that I remember from the coma, Tom, and I'll share that with you and your listeners. And that's, I was on a submarine. On this submarine, there was an aquarium the size, it was humongous, and a huge aquarium. And I'm thinking on this submarine, why would you invest this much money into an aquarium on a submarine? We're already under bloody water. So I don't know what that means, but it's something, right? I looked it up on some like dream website. I couldn't figure out the meaning behind it, but it was all manner of chaos here, Tom, I'll be honest with you.
Again, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. Just that whole image of the submarine. I've been spending a lot of time understanding neuroscience, and I might have mentioned this to you in that car ride we took that night back home. There's Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab. He's a Stanford University brain scientist, neuroscientist, and he's got a whole episode he just did on dreaming. I had no idea that what happens in dreams. There's just so much, and we can probably come back another time and talk about dreams. But fascinating. Let me ask you something. You seem to have this thread of humor or resilience. For example, you write down, "Get me out of here." And, you're trying to pull the tube out. I do a lot in my profession. My background's an executive, as you know, but I turned kind of business trainer until recently. Things changed for me. And I tell this one story. I'll just tell it quickly, Dan, because we're storytelling that. I use personality science by a Dr. Taylor Hartman, who's out of Utah Valley University. And I use that. It's another data point to help people understand why they do what they do. And so the whole essence of this story is that every child I think I start off in the room, the boardroom. So you got 12, 20 people. I'm teaching them. And I say, how many in this room here have at least two children from the same womb? And you get a bunch of people putting up their hands, women, men. And I say that you ever say to yourself when you're raising children, I just want to kill them, and yet one is so different than the other, and you get hands going up, and I say, so here's how it goes. Child number one is in the womb, and they're quiet. It's warm in here. Mom's putting food in all the time. It's dark. Hey, I think I'm going to stay a while, and they want to stay in there forever. And I get the other child, and they're kicking and they're moving, and they don't like the guy mom's hanging out with because they can hear him. And at the birth time, they're just come out and they're in the crib and they're looking up and mom going, can I just get out of here? And that child at age 13 gets a paper route, and at age 16 starts working at McDonald's. At two different children. So we're born into the world with some type of core. And it just seems to me, and that's what fascinates me about your story, I might want to study it amongst some others I've met. Why does Dan, and this is where we're going to get into the magic, why did Dan write, let me get out of here, when others will sink into depression and sink in their chairs and wither away because they let their emotions and their negative brain take over? Why did Dan, when he was given that envelope and scared, go home and have the resilience to get a novel and things? Because part of his brain probably said, hey, everything's going to be fine. I have time to read a novel. Why is Dan today telling the story he's telling everywhere, but he's infusing humor? I see these little bits of humor in you. So we're going to just park that for a minute, but I want to give it back to you now just to recollect, because I understand I'm throwing a lot at you. For the audience, we're here with Dan MacQueen, and Dan at age 28 was a healthy guy, and he did a lot of traveling and education and whatnot. And then he was given this envelope by his optometrist, Dr. Batali. And I had a favorite chef. I watch a lot of cooking shows, and I had a favorite chef that name. And he says, here, go to the hospital, and there's emergency brain surgery coming. And he had 2 surgeries. Guy goes into a coma for 4 weeks. I mean, unbelievable. Bleeding in the brain, losing lots of weight afterwards, and then comes out of it. So take us into that next chapter now, Dan. Okay, you're out of it. You said that you're learning to walk, this. As easy as you can do. What did you actually do to learn to walk and learn to talk and all that? Tell us about the details of your injury and your today, sort of how you are. So again, what did you do after you came out of the coma to get through, and those 4 things you talked about? What's your situation today? What's your prognosis? And then let's get into some positive stuff, what you're doing with this.
Yeah, for sure, Tom. So I couldn't talk because I had a tracheotomy removed from my throat, and my vocal cords were chewed up from the tracheotomy. Excuse me. One of the doctors looked at my charts and said, oh, he's not going to be able to talk again to my folks. And they told them this. And one of the nurses goes, oh, I'll get him talking again. I've seen this guy. I'll get him talking again. She took me down to the park, and she sat me in front of these people across the park, and she goes, hey, Dan, they don't think you're good enough to talk across the park, Dan. You're not good enough to talk, they don't think. She was saying this like they were saying this to me, and I found my voice. I yelled across the park some profanities. I'll spare your listeners. But she found out what motivated me, and she hammered that.
Wow.
Bold call for her to do that, because what if I didn't rise to the occasion? But I guess something that she had heard from my parents had kind of indicated that I kind of would be spurred on by this.
Yeah.
But it's that's a big part of this is motivation, and not judging the motivation, but just embracing it and really kind of understanding what hammers your motivation vibe.
Yeah.
Because I've always been someone who's been an underdog. I've relished the underdog, underestimated kind of, cool, bring it on. And so that got me speaking again. And when I got speaking again, that was great, because I get my voice back. And then I famously said to my mom, she goes, oh, Mom goes, "How are you doing, Dan?" I go, "Oh, okay, good." She goes, "No, use your words." And I go, "Oh, I should have never started talking again." But like I started building up the talking, and that took a little while. And then I was in a wheelchair, right? Because my leg had frozen at an angle in the ICU, in the intensive
Wow.
care unit. So I was in a wheelchair for a number of months, and to get into the wheelchair took 40 minutes, then 35, then 30, then 25, then 20, then 17, then 20. It was difficult uphill, but it was very much me trying. Trying is the most important thing here. Like I used to really pride myself when I was younger as someone who never tried, or the one to show that I never tried hard. Like I always wanted to be like a naturally show that I like just naturally was good at stuff. And it worked. People just thought things came easily to me, and things did come easily to me. Like work, school, girls, sports. Like I was good with this stuff. I was quite well honed with this. And I made it look like I didn't try, but I really did try under the surface. I was like a duck, calm on the surface, but paddling like crazy underwater to keep it all together. With the brain injury, that subtlety in my vibe was taken away from me. Like I really had to try hard and show that I was trying hard because I wanted people around me to see that I was trying hard to get better.
Yeah.
People came around the world to visit me from Vancouver, around London. They came to visit me in the hospital, and they always said, "Dan, it was never a chore to come visit you because you're always trying hard and you're always positive and upbeat about this." And I was very intentional with that because I wanted to show them that I was trying. My friends came to visit me from London or Vancouver. They went to Scotland for a week and they came back down. I was walking again when they came back down. I was in a wheelchair when they left, walked when they came back down. I wanted to show them that I was trying here and I was improving. I was spurred on to show them that I'm good enough to do this. I'm worthy of your love and affection because I'm trying to get better here. Even skipping ahead a little bit, but even back at work, remember someone came up to me and goes, "Dan, I really admire how much you're like trying to progress here because I used to walk with a cane and an eye patch, and I guess I progressed without the cane and like without the eye patch eventually. And like I'm always trying to push the boundaries of this stuff.
Yeah.
Better than yesterday is the word I use to describe it. It's like I'm always trying to improve my lot. 1% better than yesterday is what I want to try and do." I've gone off tangent there, Tom, but that hopefully gives you something to pull on there.
No, I mean, everybody teaching moment. We're with Dan MacQueen here. So it sustained a serious brain bleed, emergency surgeries, coma, and then some disabilities that many would not even imagine what it's like unless you go through it. I wrote a few notes down here. I like the duck quote. I'm visual, so I can see the little legs going. I was thinking about the Flintstone cart too. And the thing that's really interesting to me, and I think I'm not a psychologist, but I know enough that, I mean, there's two trains of thought going on in my mind. When people wake up in the morning and they say, if you love yourself, if you have self-confidence and you feel good, you don't look or wait for others' appreciation. You know that you're trying hard. You had this burning thing inside where you wanted to show people that you were trying hard. And I just love that. But then I was trying to think about that. You seem like a very positive guy. You always had things come to you, as you said, fairly easy. You and I were opposites. I mean, I never had the girls didn't want to be around me. I was kind of this nerd in school. But what is interesting to me is I think I'm starting to understand who you really deeply are, that you had the nurturing, you seem to have this positivity in your life. There was something inside you, it seems like, that just was like, hey, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. If I want to go to Sweden and do an MA, I'm going to do it. I want more. If I want to go here, I'm going to do it. And no matter what, our brains tend to, everybody knows I talk about the brain science a lot, and that we're wired unconsciously to look for danger first. But this guy, Dan, there's something in you that when you want to do something, you want to do it. And it seems to me, I wrote this down here, it's your words, something about what hammers you. That should be a T-shirt, dude. So, this is when the nurse hammered you to yell across the pond. I mean, that's just remarkable, but you just rise to the occasion when people challenge you. And I believe that, I'm a faith-based man, I believe that God put you into that situation so that you could come out and be a beacon to all of those who can't get hammered, who can't stay positive, who are looking for, saying, if Dan did it, I can do it. And so I wanted to go deep with you and let the audience know, everybody, that when Dan and I rode back in the car from that TED event that night, I was laughing. If you remember the film Back to the Future, Dan, did you ever see that?
This other one, yeah.
Yep. So remember the DeLorean, and was it Professor Brown? And that DeLorean was sort of trying to stay on the ground. Well, everybody, I had a brain injury in 2018, and Dan and I talked a lot about this parallel journey. I have double vision. My eyes don't converge. I have difficulty. I get fatigued because my brain works too hard. I have light sensitivity, so right now I don't have my shades on, but I have to live with these tinted glasses on. My whole life changed. I was so impaired, Dan, after I fell on my head in a bathtub that I had latency in my speaking, couldn't string my words together. And we have videos from the brain clinic I went to for 20 weeks that show I was doing this and I couldn't balance on one foot. And when I met you, Dan, and everybody, my heart grew because I'm going like all this last 5 years, I was waiting for somebody to come along that I could feel at home with and say I'm like you, and that I wouldn't feel shame. And so I give you a lot of love to you, man, for this part of the story. And what was interesting in the car ride is, Dan, tell us about your eyes, but Dan's got a challenge with his eyes. So I remember saying to Dan, okay, look, you just try to keep us on the center and I'll try to keep us on the ground so we can get you home safely. So back to you. Tell us about your eyes, because I find that fascinating, actually, what you've done to get to here with your vision. And then let's talk about some hacks. The thing about your story is, there's a lot of people who tell their woe is me stories. You don't do that. But I think you've turned it into something where you're teaching people how to use these hacks you've learned in all areas of their life where they have adversity. So yeah, bring it. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, so I've got double vision from the brain injury, which means I get the pleasure of seeing you, Tom, and everyone else in this world, which is fantastic. It's been a big adjustment because I've got two videos of the world playing in my brain at the same time, and they're not converging into one. So one's like a tilt. I just had surgery on the eyes maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, which has improved the tilt quite a bit, but the double vision's still there. I used to wear an eye patch, I used to wear a contact lens, but I realized I really hated the contact or the eye patch because I lost a lot of periphery vision, and so I stopped wearing it. And I wore a contact lens for a little while to kind of block the vision in one eye, but I realized I could see through it. Went on a safari in South Africa a number of years ago, and I thought dust and dirt would get in my eye, so I just left the contact lens at home.
Yep.
Just a hard stop break in what I was doing to try to challenge myself to rise to the occasion. I managed just fine, so we stopped wearing the contact lens. But yeah, I get the pleasure of seeing two of you, and it's quite a lot to take on because I've got two videos playing simultaneously in my brain that are not converging together.
Yep.
And we got to discern which is the correct one. So it's it's challenging. Sure, it's not easy. But you kind of learn to adapt to it, and it's like my reality now. So I'm hoping to have surgery on the other eye in a month or two, and hopefully that'll make the conversion less severe. Maybe bring it together into one. So that's kind of the vision space I've got now.
Thanks, Dan. That's remarkable, by the way. And just so people understand what Dan said, convergence. And I'm not speaking at Dan because he knows more than I do about his situation. But everybody, when I was diagnosed, it was called post-concussion vision syndrome. They always give these names you can't remember. But with me, Dan, and to my audience, if I'm driving in the car and I turn my head right and left to look for traffic, the two images don't come back together fast enough. So it appears that there's something off. It gives me a sense of my equilibrium's off. If I take my finger like this, Dan, and I move it towards my nose, right about now, I can see two fingers. It's double. And if you really do this in studio with me close up, my eyes when I'm doing this should be going like this. And at the clinic, when the doctor showed me the video, it scared me because my eyes aren't moving. What I also learned, everyone, is that the brain basically uses 30% about of your body's energy. The brain works primarily by electrical energy. So for me and my friend Dan, I have to work so hard at reading or doing anything with my eyes that it depletes my brain's energy, which causes deficits, Dan, in other areas like short-term thinking. I get extreme fatigue where, like, after the show, I'll go and put my eye mask on and lie down for an hour just to calm my nervous system. And I can't tell you how I changed my attitude, but this is going to lead to the next question for you. But I was really down. I went through depression, all the things. I won't get into my story that way. And then one day I remember Googling photophobia, which is what they told me I have. There's no cure for it. That's the light sensitivity. And I found Bono, the rock band U2, or you know of it.
Yeah.
I didn't know this, but Bono himself has had tinted glasses for 20 years. And they said it's because he's been dealing with glaucoma. And a side effect of glaucoma is, guess what? Light sensitivity. The cones and things or whatever in our eyes no longer filter the light. And so I was on a Zoom call once, and this guy says, "Oh, you look like Bono." I took that one thought down, and I'm like this. And now when I get down, like I kind of feel I'm going to be transparent with you and tell you in the audience, I should be wearing these. Can you imagine how I feel? I don't mean to be dismissive of people who have these, but when I first put them on, went to the grocery store or went down to the gym where there's others, I felt like there's something wrong with me. I felt ashamed. And you can imagine, like, I'm doing my radio show and all of a sudden now I'm popping on with these things. I took that one positive thought, and every time I feel ashamed down, I just think I'm a rock star. I'm a rock star. I'm Bono. So give us some of your hacks. There are some things that you're teaching through these stories. What are some of your hacks you can pass on that are relatable to people to use in their lives for resiliency, to achieve their goals, one step at a time, to tackle anything they face?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got a number of hacks, and I've created these kind of lighthearted ways to approach life to make better than yesterday. Everything's a little bit better than yesterday.
Yeah.
I'll share a couple with you that I've shared on a couple of podcasts of late. And the first one is icebreakers. So icebreakers, think like not a social icebreaker, but think about an actual icebreaker that plows through the ice. With the brain injury, there's lots of fatigue that happens. So fatigue is like you just get tired more easily. In London, in the circuses, they're a bloody circus. So Piccadilly Circus, Oxford Circus, they're hectic spots to learn how to walk, right? You want to find an icebreaker, someone who's walking your direction at your speed, and you follow right behind them. So you let them break the ice for you.
Oh.
Someone in like a stroller, a couple, like someone walking with a bit of a wider gait, walk right behind them, and you can let them break the ice for you. They're dealing with the oncoming traffic, but you're getting all the benefits of being behind them, not breaking the ice.
That's cool.
That's an easy one. Another one I've shared of late is called betting on the ponies. So the tube in London is how you get around. It's like the subway system, right? When you get in the tube, you want to bet on the ponies. And what this means is you want to identify people you think are going to get off at the stops ahead. So you make some snap judgments here based on, what they're dressed like, what the location of the tube is at. Are we going through Central? Okay, are they dressed in a suit and tie? Maybe they're getting off in Central London then. So like kind of box out these seats to try and get these seats. When you can sit in the tube, you can take a lot of strain off your vibe. So I get in the tube, and sometimes with my friend Manal, I just go, yeah, I got some ponies over here, Manal. Just causing an absolute scene. But I'm having fun, man. Like, it's all about fun. So like, I also had like naked walks. Now, what's a naked walk, you may ask? Well, naked walk's walking without support or aids. I was walking naked. The term kind of stuck. It was a long road down to get to the naked walks, but man, I was just happy to move it. Whole vibe's about fun, light play.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not fun. It's not, this is shitty stuff you're dealing with, right? Like, it's not fun, but it's like, if you can turn down the suck, I call it, you can make life a bit more easier to digest and to take on board. I've got a ton of these hacks that kind of allow me to make life better than yesterday, and just like take on board what you will and throw away the rest. Like, it's what you think about. There's this lovely through line from my talks, Tom, that I'll share with you and your audience. He goes, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And that's Epictetus. The reason why I'm telling you this is that you can change the way you look and react at the stuff. Yeah. If you can do that, it changes the way you look at the world. Those are some hacks for you, Tom.
Oh, man, awesome. Hey, everybody, you got to come back. I'm marking it about 44 minutes. If you're listening to the podcast in the future, you won't see Dan, and that's why I've taken my show to the next level with video. It's amazing when you're watching Dan talk. I want everybody to come back. These are teaching moments at this part of the show, 44 minutes or so. These are hacks he's given us, icebreakers, betting on the ponies, fun, light play, another few words. And then here's a big a big thought. It's not what happens, but how you react to the. I think you said mess, right, or something like that.
It's not what happens to you, but how you react to the matters, and that's
The
Epictetus.
the matter. Okay, and this is really fascinating to me because, I mean, we could go well into your education and your parents and go, where did you learn that? Because when we're born into the world, our neurons, the 98 billion in our brains are empty, but somewhere you learn that. And I want everybody to reflect on what Dan just told you. If you don't have the ability right now to pause and reflect, to find that fun, light play in adversity, if you don't have that, what could you do to find that? Or reflect on deeper, dig deeper into your pain. Why don't you have that? See, Dan, long time ago, I realized looking at my own life that I never had that ability. It came from the first 25 years wiring in my own brain because I grew up through maltreatment. And my brain didn't develop the way most people were. It always looked for danger first. It didn't pause and think about thoughts and say, hey, I think I'm going to turn it into a funny statement like icebreakers, or I think I'm going to tell Tom that I felt like a duck. Like I would just tell the story that was I'm drowning, man. But you instinctively have something there that is such a gift to everyone. The universal. Dan's figured out something universal, I believe. Dan, I so admire you and love your story. That the power, I believe, in your brain, that Dan figured out how to hack that. Dopamine, serotonin, all these chemicals your brain produces. He's just gone like, maybe he doesn't even know those actual details into his brain, but for whatever reason, he's hacking the heck out of his brain and he's bringing out this positivity and this resilience and this humor. And I really believe that if you believe you can do anything, what you think about, you can manifest. Dan, it's just amazing when you tie in all the stories you've told us, and I know there's many more. It makes me think that you're now a walking, talking entertainment sitcom. So let's finish off with that. You've been doing a lot of speaking and stuff. This is where you get to brag. Plug yourself, man. You've sent me a speaker role. So tell us about your website. There's a reel on there with some of your talks. And what are you doing with all this now? What are you doing with it, and why? And how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I'm full send on being a speaker. In fact, I'm recording my slot for the Brain Injury Conference of Canada tomorrow. So I've got to finish up a deck and get that prepared for that. We're recording that tomorrow. I spoke last week at a community center in Vancouver, in North Vancouver, Lionsgate Community Center. Shout out Lionsgate Community Center. I'm talking about my story and my experience from recovering from a traumatic brain injury, just the way I've structured my approach in life. Just to go back to what you were talking about previously, Tom, the reason why I've adapted these hacks in this brain thinking is that I knew that the brain injury didn't kill me, but it's now going to be what I think about it that matters more than what it was. If you think it's horrible, then it's going to be horrible. If you think it's positive and you can get through this, like you can level up, then you can level up. So I want to talk now to share my story, to share my perspective, because I had a lot of help to get back to where I'm at now, Tom. Like a lot of help. Family came over from Vancouver to be with me and to support me through the rehab and all this noise. Friends came over from Vancouver to help support me and spur me on and cheer me on. Friends in London did a wonderful job helping me through this. I had a ton of help and support to get back to where I'm at today. And if you don't have that help, then maybe you don't get back to where I'm at today. In fact, I don't think you do, because I struggled so mightily to do this. And I joke a lot with my story. And, I had someone talk to me on Wednesday. He goes, you're very lighthearted about how you talk about this. It's like, was it difficult? Was it tough? I'm like, dude, this is insane. I told him I was hanging on with my fingernails at times. With my fingernails. Like, am I going to be able to make it through this? I don't know. But I'm hanging on with my fingernails. Fully committed to this. And I'm like, I don't know if I can hang on, but I'm hanging on right now. And I'll take the next step and the next step and the next step. Before you know it, you've gone a far way down the road. I'm talking now to share my story to help you change your perspective, because when you change the way you look at the world, the way you look at the world changes. The world you look at changes. And that's what I want to do. My website now, MacQueenDan.com, MacQueen, Dan.com, and I'm MacQueen Dan across Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Feel free to get in touch with regards to speaking opportunities, I'm full send to being a speaker now because I want to share what I've learned through this experience, Tom. I want to share the lessons I've learned, the hacks I've kind of adopted to help you be better than yesterday. I want to give back because I had a lot of help to get here. Maybe you don't have the help that I had. I've got a podcast as well called Play Loose, Look Tight. It's my podcast right here.
What? Say that again. Oh, podcast. Play loose or tight?
Play loose, look tight.
Oh,
separate words. What does it mean, Tom? I'm glad you asked me that. Play loose, look tight. It's a life mantra, believe it or not. So play loose. Joie de vivre, have fun. Play is a very intentional word there. Play loose. Commercially, you want to look tight, be intentional, be on time, be presentable, be well-spoken, be well-dressed. Play loose, look tight. It's a life mantra.
Yeah.
If you got to boil it down to like 4 words, that's what you want to do in life. Play loose, look tight. So I do that now, and I share my experience after traumatic brain injury.
That is amazing. I want to say thanks for sharing not only do you have double vision, you can see 2 of me, which is awesome. you can read minds, because I was going to ask you about, do you have a podcast? I assume your podcast is available wherever podcasts are found, so people can find that. Everybody, the website and all the links to Dan's work, I'll put in the show notes. I definitely encourage you, call to action here. Go out and check his website out, see his speaking reel, and connect with Dan. Dan does all these things where you can tell the story. Dan, what's one of the funniest things that happened during the recovery journey? Just something that, if you think about it, makes you kind of laugh.
Well, I remember I had been in the hospital for a while. My dad came in with fish and chips, like a proper English fish and chippy from a chippy shop. Nice fish and chips, and it was like awesome food. And I had been on feeding tubes. I've been on hospital foods for months, and like no disrespect to the hospital in London, Charing Cross, they did a wonderful job keeping me alive and feeding me. But let me tell you, the hospital food is rubbish. And he came in with fish and chips, and I devoured the fish and chips. And my dad goes, "How was that, Dan?" I go, "That was effing fantastic." So that's one of the funny memories I had, just licking my fingers from the fish and chips with the malt vinegar. It was fantastic. But like, you just gotta kind of appreciate this whole experience has made me appreciate life in a different way, and not to be all woohoo and like I'm a spiritual or philosophical guy now, but like I can look at stuff and be like, is that a big deal? Is it the worst? Maybe it's not the worst. Maybe it's a little bit better than you thought it was. Can you turn down the suck a little bit on these things? Maybe you can a little bit. And that's what I try to share with my talks is all, Tom.
It's amazing. It's lots of good rubbish. I can tell there's a little bit of English in you. My mom, when we came here from England, I was born there on a military base. My dad was in the service. We had all these terms people wouldn't understand, like brawly for umbrella, and the boot for. And still today, every time somebody says a word, I go, "Oh, there must be a little thread of English in you." Love fish and chips, by the way. As we move to wrap up here, I'm going to honor you with a couple things, but I also want to say this to you, Dan, and I say this now that I've gone through a journey. There's a lot of people who, I hate to say this, and it has nothing to do with you and the show actually, but when I was injured, because I don't until I started wearing these glasses, there were so many people out there that I felt were dismissive because they would see me struggling with things, but on the outside, it's not physically, they don't physically see me, struggling. I have all the videos in the brain clinic of, if I show you, people go, "Holy cow, I can't believe that." And it makes me reflectively think about this, that your tribe, Ben, are the millions and millions of people in the world who struggle inside with some kind of adversity or pain, or they don't feel they're enough, or they've encountered something. It could be something they're dealing with that's an illness or disability that you can't physically see. And even scars on their amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. I think that's what makes you awesome, is your outlook and the fact that you're a beacon, not just for people with disability, dude, but for pretty much, I'd say 90% of the people in the world who have something inside that they're fighting, and they need a glimmer of hope. and they see you having the courage to stand up with your eyes looking a little bit different and telling your truth. So I love you for that. I want to honor you. I'm just going to put myself on the screen again here, my other view. Everybody, I'm in the studio, and I jot these down. Proof, I've got a lot of notes on my paper. These are leadership words. I'm going to honor you with these. One is inspiration. Two is humor, and I put /play because you're so playful. And yet I know every time you're speaking and everything, there's a lot of pain that goes on, but you're turning it into this playfulness. 3 is icebreaker. You are the icebreaker. So now I got somebody I can follow behind so I can fix my challenges. And 4 is really a gift that a lot of leaders don't always have naturally. It's humility. There's a great humility about you. Really proud about that. So Dan, if you look behind me on my screen, you see that circle there on the TV? There's an image. That's a challenge coin. So I'm inducting you into the Quiet Warrior community, the global community, by giving you this award. The challenge coins started in World War I, where soldiers would carry them in their pockets, and they were used for community, and they had fun with it. If you didn't have your coin, you bought dinner or drinks at the officers' club. Today, all over the world, these coins are carried by first responders and major communities, even Alcoholics Anonymous, where my dad was for 22 years. They have a version of a coin. So when I started the show, I didn't know how this would go. I just knew that I had this thread of coming through adversity and becoming a high leader, a CEO leader, and that I was meeting people who I wondered what they did to help humanity. So this is given to you because you took something incredible and showed the courage and turned it into something to help many people. The back of it is the hero's journey narrative, fully illustrated. There's a handcrafted and painted. They're minted in the U.S. So you'll be getting that. I'll be probably able to give it to you because we're local here. So I want to just congratulate you and welcome to the Quiet Warrior Tribe, man.
Thank you, man. It's an honor.
There's about 250 stories we've done now, and these coins are carried in maybe 17 countries. So just know that you're connected by a thread. So on the last word, back to you for one final word before we put on some music and finish the show.
You want me to just riff on the final word here?
Yep.
Tom?
Anything you want to say final to send us off, whatever you want. Could be about chips.
I think the through line from my talk and what I want you to take away from what I speak about is it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters, right? It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters.
All right.
Take that to the bank and you'll be better off for doing that.
That is fantastic. Everybody come back and listen to that again and again and again. So thank you, Dan MacQueen, for being here. We'll definitely, you and I will be connected for life. Everybody find that true passion like you hear coming out of Dan and find the purpose in something that you can live the life you deserve and desire and help others. And we'll see you again on the Quiet Warrior Show. Thank you, Dan.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.